Hey guys, if you're in fifth grade, I'm so excited that you guys are here. It's going to be a great night. Tonight is basically what we do. Like I said, for real though, sometimes the room smells worse. We just deal with it. Like somebody like pooped their pants over there during worship. What do you mean me? Why are you blaming me? Somebody didn't remember deodorant. But hey, if you're just joining us, whether you're in fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, retired, whatever, it's fine. We've been in the book of James the past few weeks, and we are finishing that up tonight. And so if you've been reading along with us, that's awesome. What we want to do is challenge you guys to, during the week, reread kind of what we go over on Tuesday nights so you can dive into the Word on your own and be with God in those times and not just need Tuesday nights or the weekends to do that. But let me ask you guys this question. Have any of you guys ever had like a job or somebody who's like in charge of you while doing a job? Okay. It's me. Maggie, you're fired. I'm just kidding. You're laid off. But for you guys, have you ever had like somebody where you've been given like an assignment or a task where you had somebody in charge of you? Anybody? Some of you? Okay, maybe that's at school, whatever. Anybody find that like super, super difficult to have somebody in charge of them? Yeah. I'll tell you this. I do. And I know like for me, that's been like a really big learning thing for me throughout my life is because, like I've told you guys, my high school career and junior high and everything, I've always been kind of like a stubborn person. And if you ask anybody on our staff, we get into these like heated conversations where we throw out a topic and like I want to be the one who makes a decision or is right, and then we just like argue back and forth, and I keep talking until somebody else stops, and then I know that I won. But for so many of us, like when you go into life, for many of you guys, as you're going into high school for some of you, and then when you can be 15 when you get a job here, right? 15? Something like that? 16? 15 and a half. Okay, sure. You're going to start having a job, and when you have a job, here's the thing. You have people who are over you and who are in charge of you who make decisions that you have to report to. Okay? When you have a boss, you don't get to just do whatever you want all the time. You have somebody who's in charge of you who pays you or gets paid by somebody else and then pays you whatever for you to do a job, and they have the right and the authority to speak into your life, to check in on you, to see what's going on. But here's the thing. They don't just have that right to do that to you. Part of your job when you get one is that you have to report to them, or you have to, as oftentimes the Bible says it, you have to submit to them, to their decisions, to their direction, to their influence, to their whatever, their critiques, right? And for a lot of us, that can be really, really, really difficult, right? I know for me, the first job I ever had, you guys ready for this? It was McDonald's. Yeah, and it was awesome. Aiden works at McDonald's. Yeah, it was awesome. Aiden, what do you do at McDonald's? Window number one? Let's go. Window number one, boys, okay? When I was 15 in Arizona, I got a job at McDonald's, and my mom said, you have to have this job for like 6 months, like for real, as your first job. You can't just quit, okay? Jobs are hard. You got to do this. And I was like, okay, fine. So I go, and I loved it. It was awesome. French fries all the time. I wasn't supposed to, but like I would just like grab some, and then I found out later I wasn't good doing that, whatever. Also, spoiler alert, the ice cream machine is not always broken. Sometimes they just don't want to use it. I know, okay? You work there? Who? No, you do not. But so at McDonald's, I loved it. It was awesome. I got money, so I got to do things. It was great. But the one problem I had is that I had a boss. I had a manager who would tell me, hey, you have to show up to work at these times, okay? I didn't even like when my mom would tell me I had to wake up at this time in the morning to go to school, okay? So I did not like having somebody charge me. But here's what I learned through that first job, okay? I made it the 6 months, and then I quit, and I was like, I'm out. I did it. I'm getting another job. But during that time, here's what I realized. By having somebody ahead of me, the person who was in charge of me, yes, at times it seemed ridiculous that I had to report to them, and I could do your job, whatever. But here's what I learned very quickly. The person who was in charge of me was put there for a reason and had more experience and knew more than I did, as crazy as that might sound, okay? They knew what they were doing more than me. They had a vision for that shift or for that store or what. They knew the overall direction. I was just living day to day, just getting a paycheck, just going there doing the job. And so for us, as we dive into this, we're going to be in James chapter 4. The first wisdom piece we're going to take from James, and we're going to do just 2 tonight, is that we're called to submit ourselves to God. And for some of us, when we hear that, we think, okay, yeah, religion, it's just, we got to do whatever this big mythical bearded guy in the sky says we have to do, okay? That's part of it. Like, God gives us instruction, God tells us, but the reason that we should listen and follow is because God, like we've talked about so many times, has a much bigger plan, has a much broader view, can see much more than we can, and knows that this is what's best day to day. This is the right path. This is what we should do. So we're called to submit ourselves to God. So James chapter 4, we're going to dive in. If you don't have a Bible, you can throw your hand up, and we'll get some to people. If you need one, throw it up. Perfect, great. If you don't have a Bible, we would love to give you one. Yes, give you for free. Okay, here we go. James chapter 4, verse 1, it says this. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Okay, let's stop there for a second. What are some things that cause fights and quarrels? Quarrels is just fights, arguments. What are some things that you guys fight about in life? Who said pee? You guys are gross. What do you guys fight about? Decision. Food, 100%. Homework, friends, screen time, money. What do you fight with your friends about? Sibling. What do you fight with your friends about? Have you guys ever shown up to a place and you and your friend are wearing the exact same thing and you fight about it? No? Okay. All right. Okay. Yes, it happens all the time. Okay. So right there, James is starting off chapter 4. Okay. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but do not have, so you kill. Oh, now you're listening. James is laying it out, okay? He's using an example, and this is what gets people to listen. He says, you do not have, or you desire, so you want something, but you don't have it, so you kill. Now, some of you go, I never killed somebody because I wanted something. He's using this as an example, and I want to use it this way. When you don't have when you desire, when you want something, but you don't have it, sometimes we lie to get it. Sometimes we cheat to get it. Sometimes we do the wrong things to get it. And it's because it comes from these worldly desires of I need and I want that. Okay? So what are the fights and quarrels among you? Okay? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, so you want something, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. Here's the thing. When we talk about prayer, how many of you guys, when there's something in your life that you think is going in the direction that God has for you, or you really want something or need something, let's say need, not want. When you need something, how many of you take it to God, or how many of you just complain and whine that you don't have it? I think for a lot of us, it's complaining and whining. I think for a lot of us, we just get really upset. Life's not fair. And the fact is, like, life isn't fair. What James is saying is you do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive. Okay, now check this out. He says you do not have because you do not ask God. But now he says, okay, when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. As humans, we're selfish. As humans, we want what we want for us. I think for most of us, when we wake up in the morning, we don't immediately go to how can I help others? We don't immediately start praying to God and asking, hey, God, how can I bless somebody else? We go, God, hey, I didn't study for my final that's coming up. Can you get me an A? We ask for things that we want for ourselves because we're selfish people. Because that's human desire, because that's inside of us. We ask for those things, right? We ask and do not receive because we ask for things for our own pleasure. But what if we flip the script? What if we began to pray and ask and submit ourselves to God and say, God, I'm yours, but I want to pray blessings. I want to pray for good things to happen to my friend. I want to pray good things to happen to my parents. I know. Isn't that crazy to pray for your parents? That they actually have good lives and not that your parents just give you stuff all the time? Isn't that crazy? To flip it, that you would actually pray for somebody else and not say, hey, I really want something for me, but that I want to make sure somebody else is taken care of. I think far too often in culture, we don't do it that way. Far too often, we simply look inwards and say, this is what I need to get what I want to make sure my life is good. But it says you ask but you do not receive because you're looking for things that will fill your pleasure. It says, now check this out, verse 4. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. If you get so caught up in the world and culture and the pleasures that this world brings and the things that you want, and it's all me, 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 if that's what you do, we could say that you are friends with the world, that you are friends with those pleasures, that you are friends with that sin, with that bad, negative stuff. And if you do that, if that's what your life is about, if that's what your world is about, then it says right here that you become an enemy to God. You become against God because God wasn't saying, hey, go into the world and get everything that you want, everything you need. God said what? It's two things. We say it all the time. What is it? Love God, love others. If we're not doing those two things and we're getting caught up in the world, then we become an enemy of God. So skip to verse 7. It says this. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Come near to God and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. James is saying in the midst of you getting caught up in the world and pleasures and you trying to make sure that you are filled yourself, what if we went after God? What if we submitted ourselves to God and grew close to God? Life would change. Life would be way different if we did that. Life would be good. Because if we don't do that, if we don't seek after God, if we don't connect ourselves to God, if we're just getting caught up in our social media status and what we're wearing and the friends that we have and the things that our parents tell us not to and the things that we know are not good for us, but they might be good in what we want in the moment because it sounds good, but it's not good, and all those things, then it says very clearly, we become an enemy to God. And I don't know about you, but if you're here on this weekend, we're jumping into Genesis, and we're talking about the creation of everything. And if the guy, the man, the myth, the legend that created all of that, if he can do all that, I don't want to be an enemy of God. I don't. Because when we're friends of God, when we seek after God, when we connect with God, we get so much more and so better things than we could ever imagine. Because as we've said time and time again, God has a bigger, better plan for our lives than we could ever imagine. Bigger and better. But we have to seek after God. We have to pray to God. We have to talk to God. We have to be in relationship with God. That's my first challenge for you guys tonight. That's number one. Now, number two, we're going to jump into chapter 5, and we're going to go to verse 7, okay? Now, here is another question for you guys. What is something that you guys have saved up money for a long time to buy? A trip to Japan. Are you still saving up? Yeah. Okay. Okay, what else? Bradley, yes. A car, okay. Yeah. A truck? Okay. College? A phone? A parentheses? Got it. Yeah. Anybody ever feel like in the midst of that, do you ever feel like you're suffering? Yeah, right? Like you feel like you're suffering because like you really want to go hang out with friends or do whatever, but you also know, I've got this trip to Japan I want to take. Or I've got college coming up, which is awesome you're thinking about that, right? Or a car. Or you want to go back to Disneyland because it's open now. I think for a lot of us, in the midst of those times where you have to be what? When you're saving up money and it takes a long time to get, what do you have to do? You have to have patience. You have to take your time. You have to really make sure that you're not jumping the gun, that you're not spending the money where you shouldn't, that you're following through on your plan. But what it feels like in the moment is suffering. Because you see your friends are going to hang out or go to the movies when movies were open, or they're going to get food, or they're going to the beach or whatever. And you say, I want to do that. But they go, hey, well, we need like $20. And you're like, oh, shoot. I don't have $20 because I'm saving up for this. And so I think oftentimes when it comes to timing of things, or when it comes to what we want now or what we know we need later or whatever, oftentimes it can feel like we're suffering. Or for many of us, and I hate that we keep bringing this up, but what's crazy and why I bring it up all the time is because one, it just happened, and two, hopefully it never happens again in our lives. But thirdly, nobody alive has been through something like this, and it's COVID. I think for a lot of us, in the midst of COVID, and even as we're ending it, a lot of us have felt like we're suffering. When we couldn't see friends, when we weren't at school, when we couldn't go out anywhere, when we couldn't do so many things. For many of us, we felt like we were suffering. We were going through this, and we just wanted it to end. We just wanted to skip ahead and get through it. We just wanted to go, go, go. But in chapter 5, James talks to us about patience in the midst of suffering. And how many of you would agree that is maybe one of the most difficult things to have, is patience in the midst of suffering? Patience in the midst of hardship. Patience in the midst of, I just want to get this thing over. Like for, I think, a lot of us, when it comes to school, how many of you, like when you get to second semester, you're counting down the days for school to be over? But you still got to do your homework. You got to show patience. You got to just get through it. And so for us, what I want to talk about right now is patience in suffering. Chapter 5, verse 7, it says this. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. I love how he uses farming. Because I know for us, in the beginning of COVID, we started a garden in our backyard. And I gave up after like a month. Because I was like, I see it. There's a little green. And then I stopped watering it. And I stopped caring. I stopped paying attention to it. Because I was like, let's go. Just sprout and just make fruit. Just make vegetables. Just be done, like flowers, whatever. But he uses farming because that's something that I think is so relatable to us. That we can look at that and go, I understand farming because it takes a long time. Here at Elevate, when I talk to parents at times or when I talk to people, have you guys ever heard the story of the Chinese bamboo tree? Okay, let me tell you about it. It's this story that they use when it comes to patience. Okay, and here's how it goes. The Chinese bamboo tree is one of the strongest plants, trees, whatever, in nature. They carry water in the middle of the tube of the bamboo. They grow really tall. They're really hard to get through. It's hard to cut down. Bamboo is an incredible thing. A lot of things that we use today are used from bamboo and made from it because it's a renewable resource. But here's the thing. When you plant a bamboo tree, okay, for 5 years, Chinese bamboo does not sprout. 5 years. Think about where you were 5 years ago. Can you imagine planting something 5 years ago and today, hang on, not seeing it all the way up, not seeing it full, not 5 years to fully watch something grow. For 5 years, it doesn't sprout out of the ground. 5 years. That's a long time, right? 2 of my 4 kids weren't even born 5 years ago. Like, that's crazy. But here's what happens. After 5 years, once it sprouts, in 30 days, it reaches 80% of its height. You plant something. You say, God, I'm here for you. God, I'm willing to do what you need. God, I'm willing to follow in your plan. And for 5 years, you wait and nothing happens. For 5 years, you continue to pursue God, but you don't know what the plan is. For 5 years, you continue to seek after God, pray to him every day, and you don't know what the point is. You don't see what the fruit of your labor is. You don't see, God, use me, I'm ready. You just see, I'm praying every day, I'm reading my Bible, but what's the point? Because nothing's happening. Nothing's getting better. Nothing is changing in my life. And then 5 years later, something sprouts. And in 30 days, you reach your potential. In 30 days, you reach the top. You do what you were meant to do. You do what you were born to be a part of. You become what God has always wanted you to become. We're called to be patient in suffering. And how many of you would agree 5 years to see a stinking tree grow, how many of you would give up on it? I probably would. Right? Like that's what we would do. But the reason I love that story is because I relate that constantly to my own faith and my belief when it comes to God. And there might be times and seasons where you say, all right, TJ, I'm ready. I'm going to jump all in. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to dive in. I'm going to say yes to God. I'm going to do what God wants. But God might never put you in motion for a while. It might be a week. It might be a month. It might be 2 years. It might be 10 years. But don't give up. Don't stop just because you don't see the big picture. Don't stop just because you haven't made it to the potential and the plan that God has for you. Too many of us give up too easy. We are called to have patience in the midst of suffering, of difficulty, of dark times, of scary times. Goes on to say this in verse 10, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count the blessed, those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is simple, yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. When it comes to God, say yes. Far too often when I have conversations with some of you guys, you go, well, I started reading my Bible, but nothing changed. You know, I started praying to God every night before I go to bed, and you know what? I don't hear God. God hasn't used me for anything. And what I'll never tell you is, no, God did use you. Yeah, God did something. It's God's timing, not ours. It's God's plan, not ours. And if you're willing to say yes, and if you're willing to jump in, you might suffer a little bit. You might go through seasons where you go, what is the point? God, are you there? God, use me. And God might be speaking to you by just saying, wait. And for some of us, how many of you like to be told to wait? None of us, right? How many of you can't wait to get your license? How many of you can't wait to go on that next vacation? How many of you can't wait to graduate high school and go to college? Or just be an adult? Okay. Okay. All right, this is for all my homies out there. How many of you don't like when your parents say you have to wait before you play Warzone? Thank you. Okay. Oftentimes, we won't understand what God's plan is. Oftentimes, we don't see how God is going to use us, or in what way, or what timing. But that's not the point. God never said, hey, you're going to know everything I have planned for you. Hey, you're going to know exactly when I'm going to use you. Nope. Our job is to say what? Yes. We're supposed to say, yes, I'm all in, God. Yes, God, whatever and whenever you need me, I am there. One of the coolest things about bamboo is that it is so strong, that it does so many incredible things. It's so useful. But imagine if that farmer for bamboo said, nah, 5 years is a long time. We're just going to move on. We're going to plant something else. Stop watering it. Stop tending to it. He would miss out. She would miss out on something absolutely incredible just because they didn't want to take the time to see something incredible happen. Treat your life, treat your relationship like that bamboo. Maybe you sprout in a week. Maybe tomorrow God starts using you and has a plan for you, and you know it and you feel it. You say, man, this is what God's always called me to do. Or maybe you need to just be patient and wait. Maybe God is working something inside of you that you still don't quite get, but he's preparing you for something. Maybe in the midst of the suffering, he's making you stronger for when he needs to call you to action. When we give up too early, we miss out on something incredible. When we give up too early, we miss out on the plan that God has for our lives that, I can't say this enough, is far better than something we could ever imagine. Don't give up. As we go into this time of worship to close out service, before we go to small groups, if you need to take this opportunity for this last song to pray to God, do it. If you need to take this opportunity to say, God, I'm willing to use you, and you have to mentally prepare and say, you know what? It might be 5 years before God, before you call me and you say you're in the game. It might be 5 years. It might be 10 years. It might be 20 years. You know, this is one of the truest things I can tell you. Every week that I talk to your small group leaders, here's what I remind them of. Oftentimes, your leaders who come here every single week, who love you guys more than you'll ever know, who give their time away from families, who want to be here to walk alongside your life, I tell them, you oftentimes will not see the fruits of your labor here with these guys. Many of you, life's going to shift for you the next week, year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Things are going to look way different. And for many of you, God hasn't started on, God is there, but he hasn't said, hey, let's move, let's go. He might be waiting for an opportunity. Maybe there's somebody that you're going to meet later in life that God has waited for you to say, man, this is what they were meant to do. They were meant to change this person's world. Maybe you're supposed to be used a week ago and you've been ignoring God. My point is this. It might take 5 years. Maybe you've ignored God. We don't know the timing. We don't know what's going on. But what I want you to walk away with tonight is this. Be willing to say yes no matter how long it takes. For those of you that want to be a professional athlete, has it happened yet? No. For those of you that want to be a professional gamer, has it happened yet? No. For those of you that want to go to college and get your master's, has it happened yet? No. Here's the thing. Good things take time. Good things don't happen like that. To prepare for that thing 5 years from now, for whenever God calls you, there may be suffering. There may be some training. There may be some time where you get beat up a little bit because it grows you and it makes you stronger and it makes you ready for that moment. There's a million times in my life where I thought that I was ready for something and I tried to jump in and I realized I was not ready. There's been a million times in my life where I said, man, I could do this. When I had my job at McDonald's, I could have easily said, I could be the manager of this place. Can you imagine 15-year-old TJ if I was the manager of McDonald's? Man, that thing would shut down like that. Those french fries would be gone in my mouth. You might feel like you're ready. You might feel like this is the time for me. But maybe it's not. Maybe we need to continue to say yes and say, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm sitting on the sidelines and put me in the game. Let's go. But if you quit too early, you'll never get to see what the plan was. You'll never get to be a part of that big thing that God had for you. You'll never get to be a part of that moment that God was working in you and preparing you for and saying, hey, let's go. Let's get in here. Walk away with this. Don't give up too early. That fills your life with regret, and you'll miss out on something absolutely incredible that God has for you. So right now, as we dive back into worship, if you need to close your eyes, if you need to pray with God, if you need to get away from your friends who are a distraction to you right now, do that. Say yes to God and say, God, I'm not just saying yes right now. I'm saying yes tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I'm saying yes for whatever you have in store, no matter how long it takes. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for everyone that's here, these students, that we would forever be changed by pursuing you daily. We would forever be pursuing you and saying, God, whenever you need me, I'm available. It might be sitting by on the sidelines for a season or two or years. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's tonight. Maybe it's tomorrow. But whenever it is that you call, God, we are ready to stand in your army. God, we are ready to take on this world and to change culture and to bring people to you. We're ready to build your church and dive into whatever you call us to. God, let us never say no. God, us always say yes.